Hello. I want to say thank you all for who are tuning in. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and just tuning into Stories with Kishen, ordinary people with extraordinary minds, extraordinary lives, minds too, because we are going to be talking to an individual who, in my opinion, is going to make an impact for those who are supposed to be listening to this. If you've ever, and I'll let me just preface it this way. Earlier this year, I sought out therapy and counseling services because there was so much happening in my life, but I knew some of it stemmed from years ago that had to be unpacked. So I went to a therapist, and actually, I am better because of it. I know that there's value in what therapists have to share in counseling services. So I pray that this blesses you and encourages you if you are struggling in an area to seek services. So I am going to share who is going to be with us today. None other than Ms. Carmelita N. Young, MS, LPC. She is the founder of Peace and Harmony Counseling Services, LLC, which is based out of Holt, Michigan. She uses multiple counseling modalities, including cognitive behavior therapy, motivational interviewing, and solution based therapies, life coaching approaches to support those who struggle with communication, conflict management, depression, anxiety, life transitions, grief and loss, women's issues, and self esteem. Prior to her journey, Prior to this, her journey included working with children in Kentwood Public Schools in Kentwood, Michigan, teens in care and group home and juvenile justice settings through nonprofit organizations who partner with the Kentwood Public Schools and public schools. Home-based counseling with nonprofit agencies providing crisis support management in a crisis call center that handles calls from throughout the United States and abroad, including, which I did not know this, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and support for couples, families, individuals, and adults in private practice settings. Ms. Young completed her undergraduate degree in sociology and graduate degree of professional counseling from both Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. In her spare time, she enjoys singing, which I can attest she is truly a songbird, volunteering, cooking, reading, and spending time with family and friends. Welcome, Carmelita.
Hello. It's good to be here.
I'm so glad that you said yes when I reached out and said, "Oh, I went through," and I was thinking of this selfishly, just so that you're aware. I'm like, I just went through counseling services, and I'm so glad that I did. But there are others who may benefit from it, and so when I reached out to you and you said yes, I was like, let's go, let's go, let's go. So, how did you get involved with counseling services? Of course, we know each other outside of counseling, in church settings, but how did counseling become your choice for undergraduate and graduate degrees?
Well, first, I want to clear up something just so that I'm not in trouble about anything, but I am not the owner of Peace and Harmony. Um, I am an employee there. My LLC
Got
is
it.
Me First Counseling Services, and it's here in Grand Rapids, but I'm an employee of Peace and Harmony, and so I work alongside them as one of their therapists. Um, Doing outpatient services virtually only because I'm the only Grand Rapids therapist. They're located in Holt, Michigan, and Lansing.
Got it.
So I
Okay.
wanted to make sure
That
I
is
clear
now
that
cleared
up.
up.
Phyllis Williams is the owner of that. And so I just wanted to make that
And I'm
clear.
glad you did.
But I got
And I'm glad
into
you did.
I,
Go ahead.
I got into this field because I had been I had sat on the other side of counseling. So I had counselors briefly as a child when my parents were going through a divorce. And then shortly after I had my last child, my daughter, um, my ex-husband and I went to couples counseling. And actually, we met that counselor through church. We had a couples enrichment at Revolution Christian Ministries. And they were saying, if anyone thinks that they can benefit from speaking with them, individually, that they can reach out and make arrangements to work with them. And they worked out of a church in Zealand. And so us and a few other couples had signed up to have individual couples family services. And that's how we got involved in it. Now, don't get me wrong. I know I'm sounding wonderful or smiling or saying it with like a happy voice, but it was hard work. It was a big challenge. And um, I think the impact of it and the fact that we recognize that there are not enough Black and Brown people seeking services or don't know how to get connected. And our counselor happened to be white, and she was saying that she thought that we would be amazing at this and that we could connect with people that probably would not feel comfortable talking to her just because they didn't look like her. And so that kind of helped us look and see what it was. I say I was open to it before getting married, though, because I had always thought I would be an entertainment lawyer, doing contracts and negotiations and stuff. But
What?
yes, but those math classes was on me for business. And it was just a process, not a process that I probably couldn't handle, but it was not as much as not really what I felt like I should do. And so before marriage, I had switched to social work. I had switched my major at Grand Valley to social work, and that's where I started. And then when I connected with Grand Canyon University online, they didn't offer social work, and so that's how I got to professional counseling. I work alongside social workers all the time and have been doing this for the past 8 years. And so it's not much difference to it. It's just a few classes and it's just kind of a preference. And so that's kind of how I got involved in it. And I enjoy sociology, which is the study of people. And so, like, getting to know people. And I think the biggest thing was understanding that many of us are not taught proper communication. And when I say that, I don't mean how to speak. I mean the dialogue or the dance or the exchange between two individuals, especially in more romantic, intimate relationships like a husband and wife. Oftentimes we hear the emotion of the word or whatever makes us feel uncomfortable, but we don't really know how to sit in discomfort and just listen and hear the person out. And so that is
That's
one of the
good.
things that I thought our community could benefit from. And so, although I do provide counseling services, I spend a great deal of time because most of my clients, individual and couples, have relationship stressors. Sometimes it's more than just their intimate partner, it can be their family member, like a parent or a sibling. And so, those particular relationships often involve very difficult dialogue, and we get to a point where we're using a lot of you instead of taking ownership of how I feel about the situation and learning how to separate the person from the thing you don't desire. And that is the dance of healthy, proper communication. And then, of course, you throw in the conflict management. And so that's probably the
Yeah.
most passionate piece about this field that I enjoy and get the greatest reward from more than
Yeah.
anything, the communication.
I'm glad that you said the family dynamics. Um, and believe it or not, my undergraduate, it's in three parts. It's psychology, economics, and sociology. I too love the study of people and their environments, their societies, their cultures, and so on and so forth. So I guess that's why even with Stories with Keishan, I try to get the story of the why. Why do people get involved in the different things that they do? So, and let's talk about that from a societal perspective, because what you shared about the counselor who you were able to see, and there being a need for people to disclose to somebody who can relate to them, or at least perceive to relate to them.
Mhm.
Um, from your expert opinion, why do you think people of color, African American, Black and Brown people, why don't we seek those services? I did because I knew something, I wanted to be better. But why do you think people don't seek those services?
I would have to say that probably the first initial reason would be the stigma attached to counseling. And so the way that counseling used to be perceived, now we get a lot more respect, but it hasn't always been this way, and we still have a long way to go. But I'd say about 50, 60 years ago, maybe even further than that, 70, 75 years ago, you know, it was looked at as someone not being able to handle their emotions, because that's pretty much where our foundation is coming from when we talk about counseling or that type of support, um, as a sign of weakness, and as a sign of some form of immaturity and insecurities, allowing their insecurities to just kind of sit out there. And then, of course, the true so-called true colors come out because we operate off of emotion. And so we don't always think about what we want to say before. And so that whole thing of being heard, none of those things came out as a legitimate reason. It was just this thing of, oh, you can't handle your emotions, or oh, you don't know how to talk to people, or you don't know how to channel that just to get your point across, or blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's the stigma attached to it. And because Black and Brown people tend to be a very creative, charismatic, enthusiastic, colorful type of people group, they have a strong belief in faith, many of them,
Mm-hmm.
of some religious background. And so oftentimes, the stigma combined with their belief system of how they should handle things, go to God or pray to Mary, Catholic and non-denominational kind of fall under that Christian umbrella. And you have um, this sense of I should be able to handle it in private with some type of prayer meditation. And so a lot of people don't realize that when they go and meet with the pastor, or maybe latch on to a mentor at the church, like a younger lady working, connecting with an older lady in the church. She's newly married, got little babies, or either the husband and wife going to meet with the pastor because they're having some concerns. They don't realize that that is a form of counseling or therapy. You're getting wise counsel. And
Mm-hmm.
so why not see the benefit of doing that on a consistent basis with a person who has no knowledge of you whatsoever, and they're supposed to come in with no bias, and so they can see things in a way that you can't, because emotionally that counselor is not attached in any way.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going through counseling before my divorce, with the children. And it's just interesting, even since then, going to counseling. So I guess I've gone a couple times now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but most recently, what was interesting is that person had no preconceived notions of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
or my background. And of course, people will only show you so much, because as I think most people, they don't just open up themselves to any and everybody
Mm-hmm.
without establishing some trust.
Exactly.
So, what would you say? Because I know a lot of times men in particular are reluctant to seek counseling. But I remember a church that you and I went to where the pastor's wife passed away. And he talked about seeking counseling because one of the areas that you listed that's listed in your bio is grief counseling.
Mhm.
And I remember when my dad passed away and how I felt. But sometimes grief is not just at the loss of a loved one, but it could be at the loss of a relationship. Would you say
Mhm.
that that's accurate?
Yes, definitely. There's
Okay. How do you,
multiple types of grief. I've done grief counseling for a wife. Well, they had a family counselor, but they wanted to start off individually. A wife, the kids, they all had different counselors. I was responsible for the wife, and they had had a house fire. And so that whole process of walking alongside them as they went through a very difficult time coming off of COVID or getting supplies and things of that nature. And so there's different types of grief and loss. Grand Rapids is known as the furniture capital of the world to a certain extent. And we used to have this company called Steelcase, which you used to work for many years ago. And my uncle
mhm,
worked for them as well. And during the time when they did the big shutdowns, there were some individuals who struggled really bad because their lifestyle, there was a big loss there with the money, with the 401k, with their investments and things of that nature. They went from having to having nothing. And I believe there was one or two suicides in Kent County from that drop during that period of time. And so loss, grief, mourning, that comes in multiple ways, not just um death of a loved one. We also have people that we see who has chronic pain. You may hear that as a diagnosis, um, that or they struggle with a chronic illness, possibly terminal illness, and that is a big loss of whatever hopes you have for the future, making different arrangements or changing or pivoting in many different ways. We call that life changes as well, or life transitions, because what I once knew to be a thing, I might not have the ability in some parts of my body or my mental in order to follow through with those things now that I have this illness or this disease or this medical diagnosis. And so, how am I going to do life now
mm,
that the whatever I'm dealing with, it causes some deficits or some things that I'm used to being in charge of, and now I can't do. And
yeah.
so you'd be surprised. Oftentimes, you don't hear it right off the bat unless someone comes and says that this is what they're coming for. Oftentimes, when we dig into like you said, the why or the how did we get here, we dig in the past, we find different forms of grief and loss, like you said, that people may not have unpacked. It's just a part of life. You just go through it. Talk to Jesus, talk to grandma. You all right now. Go get prayer at the line with pastor on Sunday. Go to prayer
Mhm.
meeting on Wednesday. Now you're good. If you're feeling some kind of way, go back and pray, not talk to a counselor. So now people
Yeah.
are doing that. And for people that are a little apprehensive, they're recommended, especially with grief and loss, to use their EAP or employee assistance program, because oftentimes employers want to make sure that their employees are at their most optimum self. So they offer different benefits in addition to bereavement time. They offer some counseling services, free of charge, limited, for you to try it out and see how you feel. But that is a big thing that's offered, at least for deaths in the family, with many jobs, is grief counseling.
So let's talk about that a little bit because you also listed as National Suicide Prevention.
Lifeline, yep. They
So
were one
yeah.
of the lines we answered for. The company that I worked for was called Protocol Services, and they're actually still they're still operating. Their home office is in Portland, Oregon, but they answer for after hours line, and we help with the call volume for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I say when I worked there, I answered a lot of calls for New Mexico, a lot of calls for Michigan State after hours. I
Mm.
answered a lot of calls for even parents of students who were international that lived here. Their parents could call those after hours counseling lines for schools and stuff, and we would be the ones to answer. We would connect you with, we would give you some support, not counseling, because we wouldn't have time to do that on a whole call. And then we'd make a plan for you to work through what you're doing after the call is over, in case you know what to do before you have to call us back. And then oftentimes, if you're not connected to that site or a site in your area, we would connect you to some support and get you a referral. In Wayne County, we did which is the Detroit area, we would do quite a bit of stuff for rehabs. And so during that time, yeah, we answered for everybody, including the National Suicide Line.
So, as I think of suicide, and as you were talking, I was thinking about a few classmates who I graduated with who committed suicide.
Mhm.
And I remember, of the three people that I went to high school with that I'm aware of who committed suicide, they were men. How, why do you think that is the case? Because even, um, and we talked a little bit about why men are more reluctant to not come forth, and it's the whole emotional thing behind it. But what can you say to men who won't go seek help, or maybe they don't know how to go seek help? Because I think generally people want to
Mhm.
get better, but
Mhm.
what would you say to somebody who's like on the fence?
Well, I would first, particularly men, I would first off start by saying, you know, it's okay to cry. As a matter of fact, it's necessary. um, a lot of people struggle with that, and I've been seeing a lot of things in social media lately about men and mental health, and about men being able to express their emotions and things of that nature. Um, Women are built a certain way to tap into emotions. That's pretty much the stigma and the truth behind the matter of how we were created. We have the more nurturing side. That's why we're the ones to give birth. Um, Men have that, but they don't always tap in because their priority is to provide and protect. And to provide and protect, that causes you to tap into a different part of your brain that does not leave room for being able to process through some things, to feel your emotions, and to kind of work through getting over it. Um, Protect and provide often is an ongoing working thing. You kind of got to be on your A game, and strong and alert and um competent, and no hesitations, or no delays. And so I think a lot of that has to do with men not being able to have the opportunity to turn that off for a little while so that they can refuel. Just like crying allows you to release so that you can make room for life, because life is going to life
Mm.
forever until you take your last breath. You can't stop life from happening, and so something else is going to happen. The problem is we have a lot of people, men in particular, that feel like they can keep stuffing things into that suitcase, or they can keep stuffing things into that closet, and the hinges are about to pop off because you're pushing against the door and it's pulling on the little nails out the wall. Same thing with the suitcase, is about to bust the zipper because we think, oh, I can stuff that down. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And so men have layers. One of the things that I have found for me personally in private practice, um, and dealing with couples, is that number one, I used to have a video on one of the sites that you can search for a therapist nationally and internationally. And I was like, oh, her, yeah, she looked like she don't play, or I want her. And then they would get into session, whether they saw that video or not, and they would, the way that we therapists kind of make room for everybody, many men found a space to be heard. And it was I remember the first few times I started seeing couples, it was a very interesting dynamic that I did not expect. It kind of shocked me because it was like the woman had to drag him or beg him to figure out his schedule. It took forever for them to make an appointment. And then once they got there, she's sitting there like this, and he just going on and on and on, and he was excited, and she looking like, are you kidding me? Like, you didn't even want to come. And I found that to be a interesting regular dynamic for me. Every therapist is different. I don't know what some others experience in couple situations. I can only speak for me in my office, but I thought that was an interesting thing. And I even met with some guys separately, even after they did couples counseling, because they expressed that it was the first time in which they felt like they could be heard, that they could be validated. And I always told couples whenever they come into my space that this is not a place for right or wrong. If that's what you're looking for, someone to tell you you're right and they're wrong, I'm not the therapist for you.
Oh,
My
I
goal
love
is
that.
to my goal is to help you understand each other. If I choose this person as my person, and there's some things about this person that I could care less about, or it don't really matter, or may rub me a little bit the wrong way, the issue is, what's the point? The point is that we want to connect. If it's good, if it's important to them, it should be important to me, and vice versa. And I always use the analogy, so what if they want ketchup and mayonnaise on their hot dog and you feel like you have ketchup and mustard? Do it matter? You can go to the Dollar Tree and buy mayonnaise and buy mustard, and then y'all can pick. Who cares? If it's important to them, it's important to me. So everything is
Mm,
not a right or wrong. It's about understanding why that's important to my partner, and understanding that my partner is not what they did, or my mom, years of trauma. And I see adults and families like that trying to work through some things that happened in childhood. My mom or my dad did the best they could. They're not what they did. Same thing with parents who
that's good.
struggle with substance use, and they've been clean for X amount of years, and they're trying to work on rebuilding trust. One of the ways to rebuild trust is to, number one, understand that you got to put your foot in the water. So it's going to be uncomfortable. You got to be willing to be uncomfortable if you're going to build trust. And then you also have to learn how to separate the person from what they did. And
That
so
part.
that's the kind of atmosphere that I run, individual, family, or couples. And so I have found that, just like you and I sitting here shooting the breeze, or like when we were talking on the phone, getting ready for this podcast, it's kind of like that, just making them feel safe and heard, and finding ways to connect, to build rapport. That's super important. And I always start my first sessions by saying, I could either be hired today or I could be fired next week. If you don't feel comfortable letting me know, contact our office at any time. If I'm not your flow, please, we just want you to find somewhere to get support. I'm not for everybody, and everybody's
Mhm.
not assigned to me. And so I've had clients leave because this wasn't what they wanted, but I've had some of those clients refer me to others. So it just kind of depends. I think a lot of people are more open now to getting
Yeah,
support and helping motivate others. Like, you know what, I tried it and I think you need to get into it too. I think you
yeah.
at least try it and see what it is, and at least try to free stuff from your job before you have your insurance. That way you know. And I'll tell people in a hurry, use your EAP. That's why it's there. Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's all
So,
kinds of ways to get support. So it's
right.
everywhere. It's just call, even a suicide line. You want to call and just get some things off your chest and try to put together a plan and maybe get a referral. And it's up to you to schedule the appointment. At least you connected with somebody. You don't even have to give your name. And we'll write
Mhm.
Susie J on there. You don't even have to give your name. And so people don't know that when they call those lines, that they think that they got to give their name. You can go on completely anonymous and you don't want your number reported, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There's support everywhere, and no one has to know about it but you.
You know what I find interesting is like the beginning of the year. I mean, there's been massive job layoffs, cuts,
Hmm.
uh, position eliminations. And these are typically the times where people, the uncertainty
Hmm.
really causes people to become more hopeless.
Yeah.
How do you how do you counsel somebody? I think of a time when I was working in HR, and this guy, I still remember the day. And of course, as HR, you're the one telling people that
Hmm.
they are going to be exited out the door. And this place in particular, I thought it was really inhumane. We had the boxes, it was in a wing of or an area of the organization that was not in use. And so it was assigned the location for people to be told that they were losing their jobs. And
Mm.
this guy in particular, he came in and we're sitting across from each other, and I'm reading the script, and he broke down uncontrollably sobbing. And I'm like, I'm doing all I can to keep it together because I felt his hurt. He
Hmm.
said he was the only one working. They have 4 kids and one on the way. And he said, my wife is going to kill me. And
Mm.
I'm like, as soon as he walked out, I put my head down and I just had to gather myself. How do you, in this moment, in these types of situations where there is so much uncertainty, what advice or how do you counsel? Because I know some of the things that you listed were cognitive based therapy and then a situation. And uh, how do you counsel somebody in those types of situations, whether they're male or female?
Hmm. So we all want to work from a client-centered focus in dealing with therapy. We want the
Now, when
client
you say client centered, okay, go
we
ahead.
want the client to buy into the support that they're receiving. And so our job, just like with a life coach, is to walk alongside you. Not, we're only going to go as far as you go. And when you stop, we stop. When you go, we go. If you pause or it gets too intense, you guide the ship. Our job is to help you see a different perspective in the midst of your emotion where you feel there's no control, because that's the root of our hopelessness and all anxiety and our worry is this lack of control. So in that situation, the other thing you mentioned, that cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what I think draws a feeling. This is the like most simplified version, but there's more to it than this. What I think draws a feeling or emotion, and that drives a behavior. So if I want to see something different, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I feel this way, but is this going to get my need met overall?
Mm.
And if it seems too big, how can I break this down into smaller pieces? And so, one of the things that you need to be cognitive of in dealing with someone like that is to, number one, validate what's going on with them. That's a real concern. It's a real thing to be faced with that feeling. Yes, this sucks. Yes, this is craziness. And you have every right to feel the way you feel. You got to get it out now. Especially before going home to face his wife and children. He's the strong one, he's the provider, he's the protector. So I would give him that space, and then I would share with him, this is not the end. This is part of your journey. And we need to make sure that the way you feel about yourself is intact, because you have to find something else, because there is something else out there for you. And
Yeah.
so want to make sure that their self-esteem is intact. their healthy coping strategies is intact for dealing with stress or discouragement, and then connecting them with maybe a career counselor or staffing agency, or like actually doing that part of it. I mean, depending on what your treatment plan is, or it can be made some adjustments. That's something that you can walk alongside somebody and help them with as well. I can't tell you how many times I've spent at least half of a session working with a young person on looking at colleges, or looking
Mm.
at options for trades. Same thing for people that have lost their job, or they've always talked about going back to school, but they were anxious. Now they can get some financial aid money, maybe get a little stipend left over to help with bills until they secure something else. And then while they're working, there's like a whole lot of stuff. But in that
Okay.
moment,
Yeah.
is heavy. So
Yeah.
you have to deal with the weight. And a lot of people just feel uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
We talk about that all the time. Like, people want to rush in and make people feel happy again. But that's part of people's problem. They don't have a safe place to feel, because it
Yeah.
makes other people nervous. Oh, I don't want them to cry. I want to fix it. No, let people get things out so that
Yeah.
they have space and energy to be like, okay, because the bottom line is you're probably going to fall and fail and miss the step a few times in life. The goal is not to stay down there. And
Hmm.
who knows? You have no idea what your wife may say, especially if she knows you've been working, or maybe something came across her path and she's like, it don't make no sense. Sir. My husband has a job, blah, blah, blah. Then she's like, snap, he lost a job. I got this referral today. That's what this was about. You just never know. But if a person is so down with that hopelessness, and they don't hear you at all,
Yeah.
so you have to be there with them in that moment. So that was cool to let him have that space, because he probably didn't want to do that outside of your office in front of other coworkers, and definitely not in front of his wife and babies. And
Ooh.
so giving him that space and showing him what he does have control over. If they had a serpents package for him, him reassurance that his benefits would last through the end of the month or the next month, or just some things that would be initial concerns while he's trying to kind of pick up those pieces. And that's
Yeah.
what our job is as therapists, to help you see a different perspective, because when it's heavy, you don't see hope, you don't see options. We see
See.
them. We see them, but the tears and the pain right here, you distracted. So our
Yeah.
job is to help. I tell people their brains are a Rubik's Cube, and my job is to fix it different ways until you find which one worked for you. That's my
Oh,
job.
I like that. See, now I'm gonna have to go get a Rubik's cube as a prop. So let's talk about. Now we've been talking about men, and I don't know why I'm talking about men, but I feel now let's switch and talk about women,
Mhm,
and particularly I want to talk about women of color, because we carry a lot,
mhm,
sometimes that's self-inflicted, that we
mhm,
think we can do it all, and sometimes it's because it's expected, because people see that we've done it all.
mm.
So let's talk about that a little bit,
Mhm,
because we do carry a lot, we do a
mhm,
lot. However, that's heavy. I know so many women who've had strokes, heart attacks, their cancer, and I'm like, what's going on? And it's not to say that men don't, but I'm just talking about us right now.
yeah.
So how do you navigate those waters of the stressors of work and different things and life?
Yes, work-life balance, one of the biggest things that we do, or areas that we cover. One of my first things with people is to talk about boundaries, healthy boundaries, learning how to use your no. Um, we teach people, and I tell my clients all the time. I was like, y'all, I'm so great at breaking this down and cheering y'all on. Trust me, this is something I suck at. I have a life coach now, so I'm gonna be working on it. But I believe it so much because it's me talking to me too while I'm talking to
Yeah.
you. But we teach people how to treat us, how to handle us. We do. When we allow people to impose or intrude on our time, our schedule, our routine, as a way of trying to support, be nice, help out, and then we're frustrated later on, that person may or may not know. And why should they do the work of going down their fave five list if they know that you number one and you always going to say yes?
Mm.
Yes, they might be taking advantage of the situation, but at the end of the day, they're getting their need met. And so it's up to you to reteach people how to treat you and how to handle you. And so one of my old pastors um had did a saying, I'm trying to remember it. I had it and I lost it just that quick. Learn how to say no. So when you have to say yes, you can. Now, I don't know if that
Mm.
was an original thing because I've heard a lot of people saying that, but when he said it, it stuck with me, but it sounded confusing at first. And so I had to
Mm.
break it down. So learn how to say no. Okay, so I got to learn how to use my no. So when I need to say yes, I can. When I want to say yes, I can. Because you get to a point where your pot is boiling over and it explodes. And whether you can or can't.
Yeah.
Another thing that I tell people is that I heard someone say, don't say I'm not doing anything. Because being at home, resting, watching TV, whatever, you refueling. You've been working however you worked, and Monday you got to be
Yep.
back at a certain time. So you are doing something, and then there's a lot of people that feel obligated if there's nothing going on in their day that they should help if somebody calls them or someone asks them to do something and they have plans to relax and just do nothing. And so you have to take away that guilt. So what is one of the things that we work through with cognitive behavioral therapy is cognitive distortions. So
Mm.
oftentimes people, particularly women, carry a lot of unrealistic expectations. We allow them to be tied to us.
Mm. Talk about that a little bit.
That's why we struggle with saying no. We have this thinking that people gonna think something about us. We're mean or we're unapproachable or we're too harsh or we're negative, that kind of thing. And it's worse in families. It's worse in families because we have these unrealistic obligations that we put ourselves to because of who a person is to us. But I'm trying not to go biblical on none of this stuff. I've been trying to keep it
You
in.
can if you need to.
But because I often do that all the time, even in my sessions. But the Bible says that we're supposed to leave and cleave. Now, many people only attribute that to husband and wife. And to a certain extent, they are correct. However, they have to look at how society has changed over time. Back then, when you did move out and leave as a woman, it was because you were getting married. So,
Mhm.
yes, that makes sense. However, society has changed and turned over for many, many years, and folks move out whether they married or not, women too. And so when you do that, your responsibility, your first priority now belongs to where you reside. But we allow mama them, daddy them, sister them, even our adult kids, we allow them to put these expectations on us.
Yeah.
And it's not even a bad thing that's being asked of us, it's the consistency of it. I can
Mm.
do it one time or I did it a couple times, but I don't have to do. Why do I always get asked? Because you haven't ever told them no. Well,
That's
that's
good.
normal. That's the yeah. And when you get to where you got to be, or when your body shut down, and you be like, "Well, Mama said, Mama's still going on." You the one laid up in the
Mm,
bed and they doing what they doing. Everybody's doing, they're going to do what they need to do to get their need met. And we
yeah.
should take our cue from them. I was really bad and I'm still working on healthy boundaries.
Hello.
Um, I think a lot of us are because of that nurturing role that women have, that take care of things role, that if it's done my way, I make sure it's done right. That way I don't have to worry about it. But we got to learn how to delegate. We got to learn how to be open to what can happen. I didn't think my daughter could drive me. I was so anxious, her getting behind the wheel and me sitting on the other side. I was anxious to taste her food. Now I am just like, yes. She'll text me or send me a video, Mom, I cooked, and this is what I made, and show me the stuff on the stove. And I'm like, yes. And it's because I
Okay.
finally let some of that down that I have to be the one to make sure it's right. And that's my own anxieties that I deal with. But there's a lot of women out there that feel that way or believe that way because they've done things a lot and people have just been used to them doing it. It's not so much that they don't have anybody else they can ask. It's just that you never said no because you thought such and such wasn't going to talk to you no more. Or you
Oh,
thought they were
wow.
going to go around and tell everybody you mean, you know? And so, again, men or women, we have to learn how to teach people how to treat us. And we may not always understand how to work that through. And that's why you can come talk to somebody like me and we can work through assertiveness and helping you
Mm,
build your voice and learning the difference between self confidence and being arrogant. Because there are a lot of people that have these cognitive
ooh,
distortions, these beliefs, these magical thinkings, these superstitions, or whatever that some others have put on them. Sometimes it's from youth ages.
mm.
And it's just the stuff they thought they needed. I remember when I first got married, um, I was trying to make dinner and I was like, I gotta have a meat, a starch, and a green vegetable. And
That's the
I'm
recipe.
in my early 20s with a new baby, and I had two wedding presents, so two stepchildren, and everybody little and everybody, doing their thing. He was working on driving with trucks, and so his getting home time was unpredictable. And I remember one time he was like, "You're gonna stress yourself out." I don't care. I just need a he called it his name burger. And he was like, which it consisted of meat, cheese, egg on bread, just
Okay.
a po' boy sandwich, basically. And I was just like, what kind of wife am I gonna be? He's like, your mom don't live here. It was two forks and a cup in the sink. He's like, if you don't wash the dishes, don't wash the dishes. What am I saying by using those examples that seem silly and seem minute and seem like drama queen? You'll be surprised the expectations that people say or they
Yeah,
tell us what makes a good wife, what makes a good mom, what makes a good businesswoman who can manage it all, a woman who's put together, nobody knows what's going on. And so they carry that stuff too, but it's expectations that don't belong to them. Just because someone
that's
suggests something
good.
for you doesn't mean that you have to latch on to that. Take what you need from it, pull it apart if you need to, but you don't have to take on that whole thing and then figuring out why it doesn't work for you. It's like you're wearing a coat that don't fit you.
That's good. You just really gave me a different perspective because you're right. Oftentimes we take somebody else's ideal
Mm-hmm.
of a meal or a household or how the what should happen after you eat, before you eat, and all of those different things into consideration. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember just growing up, just some of those things. I would watch my grandmothers in particular. One was, uh, I had a maternal grandmother who was by herself, and then I had a paternal grandmother who her husband, my grandpa, was still, they lived together. But
Mm-hmm.
just the different expectations and the different dynamics of the home, you pick
Mm-hmm.
up things from people that you're exposed to.
Exactly.
But I like what you said. He was like, this is where we are. And in essence, we gonna create this, not you
Exactly.
bringing in something else.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with having an idea or at least a structure, but if it doesn't work for you in that situation, then you got to pivot.
Yep. And that's just the same thing with even with individuals in counseling. You know,
Mhm.
they've got some beliefs or some ideals about the way things should be or the way something should be done. And you got to tell folks it's more than one way to skin a cat. Like you can't
Mm,
try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Eventually, that square peg won't be square anymore. Something's going to happen to those corners. They're going to start rounding out, or you're going to chip them away, which means you're losing pieces of yourself in that
mhm.
process. And so is it worth it? Because now you no longer look like the square you were at the beginning, and you definitely
That's
don't
good.
feel like it. And so you have to find what works for you.
Hmm.
And that's the same thing with setting boundaries. I need to go and recoup, refuel, get rejuvenated. I got to go pour into myself because what do we all say in the helping fields? You can't pour from an empty cup. I got to
Hmm.
pour into myself because I know you're going to come back around. My kids, somebody gonna need something from me. I got to get ready for the next go round.
That's
So I'm gonna
good.
have to say no these next couple of times so that I can get ready for whatever's big coming up. Or I promise such and such too, and I can't, you gotta let me help somebody else. Go ask such and such. Oh yeah. Why you don't ask them? Well, you won't never say no.
Woo-wee.
And
That
so
that's
as
good.
counselors, it's like I said, you're weighted with whatever emotion is going on. Because
Hmm.
it comes out anger or it comes out pissed off, but that's an umbrella. There's real emotions under there that you need to tap into. And we're grown-ups. We need to learn how to say, like I tell kids, use your words. When I was a teacher, like use your words when I taught kindergarten and young fives. It's like adults, use your words. Because if
Oh
I
wow.
if I tell you that I'm not feeling good, I was tired, I didn't get to lunch, you're gonna lean in and connect and try to figure out, oh man, how can I help? Blah, blah, blah. But if you just come off biting my head off and I don't know what's going on, you're gonna turn away. And so again, in all those instances, we teach folks how to handle us.
I like that. I like the analogy of the kindergarten. We tell the young people use your words, but then as big people, adults, we don't use our words.
Mm-mm.
You
So we
know,
have
we
big
just
people tantrum
use,
tantrums, not 2-year-olds. We become big people tantrum.
and that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, channel that, or let's talk, get it out, speak. What is it? What's really bothering you
Mhm.
in essence?
And think about growing up. It's not a good, bad, or indifferent thing, but human nature, I tell everyone that most of the time we're human. I'm not going to say every family because you got some that's real chill and real emotionally intelligent and real, cool, calm, and collective, and they know how to compartmentalize, la, la, la. But there's only a few number of those types of families or whatever.
Right.
Most of the time we learn that when we leave the nest. But when we're taught to respond and react. We're not
Hmm.
really taught to communicate in a way that will get our needs met. But what happens, another cognitive distortion or unrealistic belief or expectation is we feel like because we're in relationship with folks and they know us or they saw us get upset before, we would assume or feel like they should know. Again,
Hmm.
like you said, no, you got to open up and say, because you know, I'm not thinking about the last time when you got pissed off when I said something near that. Again, I got something I'm trying to get from you, and so I'm not trying to not be considerate, but I'm putting my consideration first. And it's
Hmm.
not to say that I have to get it from you. I have some more people I can ask. I got some more resources, but now I got to do a little more work, and that's not a big deal. Just tell me, But we're like, I just thought you would have known. No, I do that with couples all the time. And it was like, but they said, I said, so the honeymoon stage, y'all was just, oh, they so wonderful. And oh, but you forgot that you a guy. and she is she. And y'all don't think the same, y'all don't see things the same, y'all process differently. What women feel as priority is very different from men, and how you tripping. No, 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 no. It's not even about that. It's about understanding what's going on.
I think that's good. And as I think of, I always frequently this analogy comes up when you're on a plane and they're telling you all the safety features. What do they say? Put on your oxygen mask first before you help somebody else. So if you're not able to be in a space of breathing, I'll just use that word. If you can't breathe, how can you give air to somebody else?
Exactly.
So it's the same thing. You have to be well in your mental strength, your emotional strength, physical strength, all of those different areas before you can help somebody in those other areas. Otherwise, you're not really at full capacity to help people. You're, being drained or what have you. So that's good. That's good.
Now you're creating a whole nother issue because now you mad and biting somebody's head off when you didn't have to. You could have been over there resting.
All of that.
All of
This
that.
this just came to me. Have you ever had a like a retreat where you just share that type of information with women?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Sometimes God give me these downloads in the moment. You know me. Ephesians or
That
Ecclesiastes 11
sounds
and 2.
very
Multiple streams of income.
important. Yes, that sounds very important. Just like some people told me I should get a podcast. I'm like, oh my God, you guys don't know I'm very shy when it comes to that kind of
Well,
stuff.
this this is what I share with my daughter who wants to be a model, and she's been concerned, well, mom, I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. I said, you your clothes you're modeling clothes. Take the focus off of you.
Mm-hmm.
You are modeling the clothes so that they can see the clothes, because that's in essence they want that look.
Right,
So as a person in that space of therapy services, counseling, it's not you, you're the vehicle, you're the vessel, but the services that you're providing people need.
right.
And
That's true.
I am going to just encourage you to have something like that, because sometimes people just need to know. I never forget the time, I don't know what you were sharing. You were sharing a message and you broke down the fruit of the spirit. And I know a long time ago,
That's
you
what
were
I'm thinking.
talking
I'm
about,
like, Keisha, this over
I
50,
still,
10, 15 years
yes. And I'm still remember 20 years. So I still
ago.
remember you breaking down the fruit of the spirit. You said it's not the fruits of the spirit, it's the fruit of the spirit. And the analogy you gave, I don't know if it was a grapefruit or an orange, in the each part of that creates the whole fruit of the spirit.
You remember everything.
Cause it spoke to me. I'm like,
Wow, I
dang,
totally
she broke
forgot.
that down.
I
You
totally forgot.
did.
It was an orange.
I knew it was citrus.
Yes, it was an orange.
So that's how I feel about the services that you have to offer people.
Mhm.
You are that fruit, and there's different components that people need to be aware of, but they
Mhm.
don't know because you scared to peel back.
I hear you loud and clear. In my mind, the wheels is already turning. As you're talking, the wheels is already turning. I hear
Hey,
you
one
loud and clear.
plants, one waters, God gives the increase.
That's right.
So
That's right.
So, yeah, so let's leave on that note. So, whenever you get to the point that you are having your retreat or what have you, um, let me know.
I definitely will. I will definitely
Yes.
let you know. Yes.
So as we wrap up, what are some, I guess, final words for people that you want to share if they're like, oh, I still don't need nothing. I'm good just the way I am. But there's a need. Clearly, there's a need because it's evident by their inability to keep relationships or jobs or what have you. So, what would you have to say in this final moment?
I would challenge people to think differently about what it is. If you don't want to call it counseling or you don't want to call it therapy, it can just be support. There are people that come because they're trying to prevent a big negative event. We want to learn better communication, or we want to find some healthy coping strategies for grief and are interested in why some days I feel this way and some days I feel this way. I tell people that I spend a lot of my sessions educating others. I mean, if someone comes in and there's a lot going on and they need to word vomit, great. We'll spend a certain amount of time doing that. But at the end of the day, the core of what I'm trying to do in this field, and even when I speak at community events in the city, is give people information so that they can learn how to take back some of that control. And so, I mean, the stigma is there. So oftentimes we say support, walking with you, working through communication strategies, trying to invest here so that I don't have to pay a big thing later. There's different ways you can spin it. But I always to encourage people, I don't even tell them to come to me. If you want to come to me, hey, go online, Google Peace and Harmony in Holt, Michigan, and call the office and you can connect with me easy. However, you might have some kind of concerns and it might be easier for you, especially now that a lot of that is virtual still, to go through your job EAP. 3 sessions, not gonna be no big deal. You don't have anything to lose. They don't know you. I had went through it during some grief and with my job, and I had a therapist over in Detroit. It's okay. I know that those of us who are supporting, it is highly recommended and almost mandatorily encouraged, not so much, but almost, for us to have someone so that we can be healthy and in a good space to work with folks so that we're not getting our stuff mixed in with them and our feelings in the way so that we can continue to be non-biased and clear when we're working with someone. And so I'm doing it. You'd be surprised who you sit next to at work who does it. There's different ways to make it convenient. A lot of people are choosing virtual, some people choose in person. A lot of times when you go in person, um, the places are in like multi-office buildings or it's a building behind some buildings. So there's a lot of discreetness there. So it's not like there's all kinds of ways to provide a safe space. And so it's there if you want it. Connect with a book. Some people might start with a prayer book or one of their favorite authors about something. And then it causes them to want to talk about it even more, or they see more of themselves and it hits them different. Like you said, one plants, one waters, God gives the increase. I'm just like, here it is if you want it. If you don't, it's fine. I also worked with a company called BetterHelp. So there was these little I call them little popcorn type therapy companies where you could get on there and have different levels of support, different amount of time, not the full hour or whatever. And it's all based on your income or flat fee. And so it's like a subscription or whatever. And that's something that's an option too. And oftentimes you'll never meet that person ever in life, ever in real life. And so a lot of people are concerned about how they're viewed. So I think that it's not as shied away from as it used to be. But yes, you do still have those macho ones. And when you start to look around and see that your space is real empty and it has nothing to do with a close circle, folks just ain't dealing with you. They just start scattering and running off. At some point, you'll think, I might want to talk to somebody. Let me at least talk to somebody 2 times and see if I can get some answers. That's the
Yeah.
only way. You're going to need to talk to somebody not related to you and somebody that's going to give it to you straight.
Well, there you have it. And I want to just thank our featured guest today, Carmelita N. Young, for sharing her story. Again, stay tuned. There's more coming from Stories with Kishen, ordinary people with extraordinary lives. Thank you all for joining. Take care. God bless.